I will go ahead and get started. It's so great to see all of you here today. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today to hear the story of the red wolf. My name is Emily Mason, and I'm the advocate with Environment North Carolina Research and Policy Center. As an advocate, I am so grateful to be able to work on wildlife crossing advocacy since more wildlife crossings are a way to help the red wolves as well as other animals survive in a world with limited habitat. So I want to thank our collaborators, Environment America Research and Policy Center, Environmental Action, and of course the Red Wolf Coalition for
Mm.
collaborating and helping to spread the word about this webinar. And I'm so excited to have Kim Wheeler, Executive Director of the Red Wolf Coalition in North Carolina, here with us today. To talk about the Red Wolves. She brings with her a wealth of experience, and with 20 years as the executive director under her belt, she has played a crucial role in Red Wolf recovery, including educating the public about red wolves, and she also has experience with hands-on care with the wolves. So it's Wolf Awareness Week, and the red wolves are such an iconic and important species that we want to survive and thrive in the wilderness. But unfortunately, they are still endangered and are actually the world's most endangered wolf. Red wolves only roam limited habitat in North Carolina, even though they used to span a much larger area, which we'll talk more about later. So we're really excited to have Kim here with us today to talk about the red wolves and their recovery efforts. After the presentation, there will be about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A, but if you have questions, make sure to put them in the chat and I will read them out loud at the end. All right, so Kim, thank you so much for being here. And with that, I will go ahead and I'll hand this off to you.
Thank you very much, Emily. I've been excited and looking forward to this webinar since Emily and I set it up. Love to talk about red wolves. So what I'm going to go through this presentation. Basically, I could talk for hours about red wolves, but our time is limited. So I am going to move pretty fast. There's a lot of other information that can be covered. What I tried to do is pick some of the most important information to share with you guys, especially for those people that don't know anything about red wolves, give you a little bit of history and then tell you where we are today. Emily, go back to that picture of you and me. I want to just make a note about something. So you see my picture here. The animal behind me is a mount, a red wolf mount in the Red Wolf Education Center. What's cool about him is I used to take care of him. I've been taking care of red wolves since 2012 at the Red Wolf Center, but before that as a volunteer with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And I named him Yuli, which is I love you backwards. And he was just the sweetest animal. So I just wanted to share that, give a little shout out to Yuli. So you can go ahead and start. I am going to minimize my video. You don't need to watch me going through the slide. So as Emily said, I'm the director of the Red Wolf Coalition. Last Friday, I celebrated my 20th anniversary as the director. I have a sales and marketing background and have learned everything I know about red wolves at the feet of the Red Wolf Recovery Team, through books, other educators, mentors, anybody that has anything to do with red wolves. I love to sit down and talk about them. Next, go ahead. Next slide. Oh, go back one more. There you go. So the Red Wolf Coalition, all we do are red wolves. The Red Wolf Coalition is an advocate for the long-term survival of red wolf populations by teaching about the red wolf and by fostering public involvement in red wolf conservation. That last part of our mission statement has become very, very important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go along. One thing, when you are in an organization for very long, one of the most important things that you can do is grow and change. Think about your mission, how you present the mission, look at how the public is receiving that mission, what is the narrative that you're talking about? And that's very important. And one thing I am very proud to say about the Red Wolf Coalition is we have grown. We have looked at what our narrative is. How are we talking to people? What is their response? How are we responding to them? And so, again, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to point that out because that's something that I live and die by, this mission statement. Next. Go ahead next. So if you've never seen a red wolf, that was a picture of a red wolf. Two of the wolves, they were two brothers that were at the Museum of Life and Science in Durham. Most people have probably seen a gray wolf. If we were live, I would ask you to raise your hand and tell me if you've ever seen a red wolf. Red wolves are smaller than gray wolves. Beautiful animals, kind of a cinnamon color around the ears and the legs. Beautiful, beautiful animals. I think one of the most beautiful canids that there is on the planet. Just, I'm a little biased, but definitely one of the most beautiful. Next slide. So I'm going to start into a little bit of history. I think it's important if you're going to understand the Red Wolf program and red wolves that you understand where they came from. I'm not going to read every one of these, just going to point them out. So in 1867, the red wolf is listed as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. In 1968, the service began a study of red wolves in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. That area is going to come back around, and I'm going to talk about that to be very important in current day red wolf conservation. 1973, the endangered species becomes federal law, and the first recovery plan is completed and implementation begins. So that is the beginning where we are off and running. Next slide. So 1969, the first red wolves were placed in captivity at Point Defiance Zoo in Tacoma, Washington, and this started the captive breeding program that we know today. 1977, the first litter of red wolves is born, and in 1980, the last wolves were removed from the wild, and the red wolf was declared extinct. Next slide. So in 1987, restoration begins with the release of 4 captive born wolves from the SAFE program, which is Saving Animals from Extinction at Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. A lot of people ask me, why Alligator River? When you look at a map of Alligator River, it is surrounded on 3 sides by water. It's very rural. There's a great prey base, and there are not a lot of people. And that piece of property had just been given to the state of North Carolina from the Prudential Insurance Company. So it was a great match. North Carolina is part of its historic range, which I have a map I'll show you in a little bit. So it made perfect sense. There's a great piece that was written, and it comes a little further on that I'm going to read to you, where the original biologists talk about that moment when they release those first animals. I can't read it where I don't get chills. So 1987, the first release of the 4 pairs. 1988, the first set of red wolf pups were born in the wild at Alligator River. Pretty cool. And that's a picture of a red wolf pup. I love that age. They have those big ears and they haven't grown into them yet. And they're just the cutest. Go right ahead. So let me just state, I am not a geneticist, but I did want to mention for those people that are very science minded, the taxonomy of the red wolf. I don't need to go through this, but you can see it there. Next. Again, this is a chart on the ancestral canid. There have always been a lot of questions about what is the red wolf? Is it just a gray wolf coyote hybrid? Where did it come from? So this is just a little canid chart. Again, I'm not a geneticist. Could talk about this for a while, but didn't want to get bogged down in a lot of the details about where the red wolf came from. But I think this is a great representation that can give you an idea about where the red wolf came from. Next. So this map is a historic distribution of Canis, and that means the gray wolf and the coyote and also the red wolf. So you can see that the eastern wolf, the red wolf, had its own territory. Coyotes had their own territory, and the historic range of the gray wolf. Next. So when I was going through the timeline, I mentioned Texas and Louisiana. When the service went into those two areas to try to figure out what in the world happened to the red wolves, they went in and trapped about 400 animals. Now, I'll remind you that this is before genetic testing. What they used were morphological information: size of the head, size of the feet, the body size, the leg size. And so they had a criteria by which they chose. Out of these 400 animals, 17 were taken to Point Defiant Zoo. And of those 17, 14 became founders of the Red Wolf program. That means every red wolf since those 14 were born are the founders of the Red Wolf program, which always leads people to ask about genetic diversity. That is something that is clearly on the mind of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who is the responsible federal agency for every red wolf, both in the wild and in the SAFE program. And so many of you may know the SAFE program used to be called the SSP program. Now it's called SAFE, Saving Animals from Extinction. And I'll talk a little bit about them a little bit later. But again, that Texas and Louisiana area is going to become a hot topic of conversation for today. Next slide. So this is North Carolina. Over on the right-hand side, Beaufort, Dare, Hyde, Terrell, and Washington counties are where the only wild population of red wolves reside. It's about 1.7 million acres. The wolves live predominantly right now on Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge, Pocosin Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, and also some private land. There have been a lot of articles written that just want to land it at Alligator River, and that is inaccurate. It's very exciting. At one point in time, the wolves were on about 65% private land. That certainly has changed over the years, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is working incredibly hard to continue to work with landowners to address landowner concerns. Landowner rights are huge, as it should be. The service has become very transparent. They've always been. I feel like I can say that because red wolves is all we do. So I feel like I always am knowing what's going on, but had to step back and realize after a couple listening sessions that I attended a couple years back, they did not know what was going on. They really didn't even know who to call. And so the service has worked very hard. They recently had a virtual meeting that will be posted on the Red Wolf Recovery Program's website. So write that down, Red Wolf Recovery Program. I don't believe they had a chance to get it loaded before they went on shutdown, but it is an hour and change very well spent. You will get all the up-to-date information directly from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And I know that the coalition, once it's posted, after shutdown, that we will also post it on our social media. So that will be somewhere else that you can listen to it. But again, get a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, whatever it is, some iced tea, and sit and listen. Great, great information. Next slide. Another question that's always plagued, as I alluded to when we were kind of going through the genetic and the ancestral slides, is what exactly is a red wolf? The Academy, the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine was tasked by the Fish and Wildlife, who was asked by the Congress to give a taxonomic status of both the Mexican gray wolf and the red wolf. We were thrilled that in 2019, after a year's study and work, they came out and said the red wolf is a unique species. We always believed it. We never had any doubt, but it was really heartening for such a prestigious group of scientists from the National Academies Academics of Science, Engineering, and Medicine to come out and reiterate what we already knew, we always felt like that put a pin in that discussion, but I don't think it will ever go away. I think people will always believe what they want to believe, but we believe the science and this study. So we were very excited when this study came out. Next slide. This is a red wolf. This was a matriarch in the wild. If you'll notice the orange collar that she has on, all of the known red wolves, with the exception of one who lost her collar, wear an orange trekking collar. For anybody that hunts, orange means something. And the service thought long and hard about what can we do to let people know that this is a red wolf. A lot of people have a hard time distinguishing the difference between a coyote and a red wolf. And obviously, we have coyotes here in northeastern North Carolina. And so they decided on the orange collar. It also has a number on it and a letter. And what that allows the service to be able to do, if they have telemetry equipment. The majority of these collars are GPS collars and VHS together. And so I believe there's only a couple that just have VHF collars. And so it allows them to track, but also if they're out and the public sees an animal or there's something that happens, you have binoculars, you can let the service know, I saw an animal and it had an H on the collar, and the service will automatically know which animal they're talking about. This girl here lived to be about 13 years old, which is way above the average. The average is about between 5 and 7 years old. She was a beautiful girl. As happens with a lot of canids, her teeth had been worn down, but a beautiful, beautiful animal and a great representation of that orange collar. So if you're ever in northeastern North Carolina and you see a canid with an orange collar, consider yourself very fortunate to have just seen um, a red wolf. Go ahead, next slide. So let me give you an update on where the population is today. The captive population in the SAFE program, there are about 280 wolves, which is the highest that it's ever been. So we're very excited about that, in 50 safe sites across the United States. The wild population, there are 18 known red wolves with an estimated population of 28 to 31. Of those 18, that does not include any pups born. The pup numbers don't go into the population numbers until they're collared. And so the service will be getting ready to do that December, January timeframe. And we're excited to have those pup numbers increase in the wild, because our numbers have been low for a number of years, and this was a stellar pup year. Go ahead, next slide. So I mentioned Galveston Island and Southwest Louisiana. There is a lot of research going on right now. You may or may not have heard about a company called Colossal and their notion that they cloned a red wolf. They did not clone a red wolf. Those animals that came out of Louisiana, Texas area, they are coyotes. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Go ahead, next slide. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife is the responsible agency for every red wolf, as I mentioned. A very dedicated group of individuals have always been very dedicated. They have been able to, as challenges arise, been able to find solutions to challenges that have arisen. I am incredibly grateful for all of the education that I've received. I am forever grateful for their dedication to this species, for seeing challenges and not walking away from them, but meeting them head on and trying to solve the challenge, and what can they do to give the red wolf a better chance at success in the wild. Next slide. Some of the things that the service has been doing for anybody that's been to northeastern North Carolina, Highway 64 is a major thoroughfare that takes people to the Outer Banks. The speed limit is 55. I think a lot of people think it's just a suggestion. Um, Vehicle mortalities has become the number one reason for red wolf mortality. So the service recognized this early on as they saw vehicle deaths increase. So one mechanism that they landed on was to put signs like you see the one here, and the coalition was honored and thrilled to be able to purchase one for the service when they needed another. There are two located on Highway 64 as you're traveling east and west. There's also, I believe, one on Highway 264, and they move signs around as they see the need. Again, it is to allow people to recognize as you go over that Alligator River Bridge that you are now crossing into um, habitat where the red wolf lives, and to be aware, you're going to see a canid with an orange collar. Be aware. Also on that collar is a reflective tape so that at night headlights will reflect your headlights. The service is also working very hard to find other mechanisms to mediate red wolves coming onto this very, very busy road. They have flaggery up, they have fox lights up, they haze animals. I mean, this is not a situation where they just put wolves out and hope for the very best. It's not. They continue to monitor them by looking at those GPS points to see where wolves are traveling. And when they find that they're getting too close, again, they will personally go out there and haze an animal. They will do whatever they can do. And hopefully, with the young pups coming up, it's a great opportunity. I always call it an educational moment for those wolves to learn that roads are bad. Certainly is a learning curve for wolves as they're growing. Wolves have come out of the SAFE program, and I'm going to talk about releases here in a little bit also. Next slide. So wildlife crossings. We are very excited. There was a grant that was written, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, North Carolina Department of Transportation, and the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission came together and wrote a grant, and they did receive funding. And we have been notified some time ago that that money is going to come to North Carolina. We were all afraid that it would be held and tied up in red tape, blue tape, green tape, whatever kind of tape there is, but excited that we're going to get some wildlife crosses, not just for red wolves. This grant was not just focused on red wolves, but all wildlife crossings. We have an abundance of wildlife here in northeastern North Carolina. And this is going to be built to help all wildlife, even small critters. And we don't know exactly where they're all going to go. I think they're getting sorted through when the money distribution happens and where those wildlife crossings. It's certainly going to take a couple years, but I want to make a point here. These wildlife crossings are incredibly important, but also it is important everybody understands the service is not just sitting back waiting for these wildlife crossings to be built, because they recognize that it's going to take several years for this to happen, and they continue to try to find ways to help mediate these vehicle deaths. They're even working with some engineering students at NC State to be able to maybe do something with the collars that does something. And again, I want everybody to understand the service is not just sitting around, but wildlife crossings have proven to be very effective in saving the lives of wildlife and also human beings that are caught up in hitting these animals, and then there's devastation there. So we are excited that the money is coming and these will be moving forward. Next slide. One question I get a lot is, how can you help? The service gets that too. There are a lot of opportunities for calls for action. This is just one sheet. There was a virtual meeting that went out in 2022. The service had one for 2025. And again, I encourage you, Red Wolf Recovery Program, go to their website, not just because this most recent virtual meeting will be on there. There is tremendous information. It gives a rundown on all the pups that were born, the family groups. There is links to other virtual meetings. There's information about historical data about from the beginning till now, wolves, pups that are born, pups that were released, mortalities. I mean, it's great, great information. If you are a geek about data, this site is the site for you to go. Um, Back to the question, I get questioned a lot about what can I do? What can I do? A lot of people want to volunteer and help, and that is wonderful. One of the first things I ask people is, where do you live? Let's see if there is a safe facility in your area. And if there is, maybe you can go and volunteer. I think volunteering is a great way to give back. Every safe facility is different in what they allow people to do. So I always recommend, I can't tell you what you can do, but I can tell you to contact them. The other thing that is important is to find an organization like the Red Wolf Coalition that is heavily involved in red wolf conservation and look at their website. I know websites are sort of becoming antiquated, but they are important. We're not always good about getting up to date information, but our social media is. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, take a look there. My board chair, Neil Hutt, who's on this call, does a fabulous job with our Facebook page and keeps it engaging. She engages with people, tries to keep the trolls out. You know, that's a full-time job, but we want to provide information on a daily basis about what's going on, whether it's going on with the service or what's going on in the life of a wolf. Sometimes it's funny and lighthearted. Sometimes we have to get a little more serious. But again, I encourage you to find an organization and keep up to date with red wolf conservation through websites, social media, news alerts, whatever it is, whatever form and function they use. That is one of the best things that you can do. Next slide. In June of 2022, a revised recovery plan was written. I encourage everybody to take an opportunity to read it. You will find it on the Red Wolf Recovery Program's website. I encourage you to read it. It is very, very well written. Emily Weller, who is the coordinator of the Red Wolf program, wrote this. It was actually a 2-year process. There was a group put together. There were about 50 of us, and we worked through this process. It was very, very interesting, very diverse group. Not there were NGOs, there were state representatives, and not just from North Carolina, but other states. The service, just a wealth of information that came together and wrote this. It is a very comprehensive plan without being so detail driven. One thing I ask everyone to remember when you are recovering a species, you want to allow the people on the ground, the field work, to have the ability to do their job without having a recovery plan that says you must do 1, 2, and 3. Again, you're recovering an animal, situations change, science changes, and this recovery plan meets those goals to a T. I was so honored to be part of this program or this process. It was a long process, and there were days where we met for 4 hours, 6 hours, and we talked about things that were so over my head, but I still learned, and that's important, is to keep learning. But again, I urge you to read this, and again, you can find it on the Red Wolf Recovery Program's website. Next slide. So the Red Wolf Recovery Program, through legal action, was required. This is our third amended release plan. So what this means, the population of red wolves had become dangerously low. The coalition and 2 other NGOs was involved in litigation, took them to court and said, hey, you need to do something here. These wolves, this population is going in the wrong direction. And so we were able to, through back and forth, come up with a plan. And that plan was for the service to release wolves from the safe population. Now, if you'll remember, That is how this red wolf program, this wild population started, was with animals from the SAFE program. We have just finished phase 3. The first two animals, I don't have a percentage. I wish I had a percentage of success. This last year for 2025 has been the most successful release plan, I would say, to date. Um, Last year, we did not have a great pup. I'm trying to look at my notes here so that I can get all the pup counts. All the numbers and everything get very confusing when you're trying to keep track of what animals. Everybody has a stud book number. We don't name wild wolves. A lot of people like to name wild wolves. Um, our philosophy on naming a wild animal is when you give something a name, you give it a personality. And these are just wolves. These are wolves being wolves. A lot of people don't like the numbers, but I would say to you, look at the wolves in Yellowstone. You will not find any more iconic wolves than those wolves, the original wolves out in Yellowstone. Next slide. Another mechanism that the service has initiated is called Pray for the Pack. It's a habitat improvement program for locals, not just for wolves, but for other habitat and other critters. What the service does is talk to the landowner and talk to them about what would you like the habitat on your land to look like. And Luke Lyles is the gentleman who is in charge of that. There is also some landowner compensation involved in that. We are not involved in that, so I'm not sure of what the criteria is for that. But I do know it is very exciting. Again, it's another way to engage with landowners because the Fish and Wildlife is not just interested in throwing red wolves out on the landscape in a release program or wild wolves that are born. What they're interested in is making sure that there's a safe place for these animals to live. And what that will entail is listening to landowners, understanding how they feel. We certainly have heard over the years landowners say the wolves are eating all the deer, or I'm not seeing as many turkeys as I used to see, or I'm concerned that the government is going to come on my property and I won't know about it, or they will require me to do X, Y, and Z, or I can't do X, Y, and Z. And that's not the case. There is no critical habitat designation for the red wolf. That means you can do what you want to do on your program. The recovery team is always interested in talking to landowners. And that's been a change, not the talking to landowners, but looking at the recovery of the red wolf as more than just a single thing. It's not just getting animals on the landscape, but it's understanding the landscape where these animals live. And on that landscape are human beings. And it is incredibly important. We must take the human into consideration. A lot of people just want to look at the wolf and say, the wolf is right. The wolf never does anything wrong. And that's not the case. It's a wild animal. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's just like when the service does releases, they have all kinds of plans about what two animals brought together in an acclimation pen. Will they breed? Will they stay together when the gate is open? And lots of times it's not up, most times it's not up to them. The wolves have free will. They can stay together, not stay together. But what the service tries very diligently to do is to make the right decisions. Again, to set these animals up for success in the wild. Go ahead. Next slide. So, what are the challenges to red wolf recovery? Certainly the tolerance of predators, education, and coyotes. Red wolves and coyotes will breed and produce fertile offspring. The service back in the late 1990s recognized that they were seeing an increase in hybrid litters born, red wolves and coyotes that have bred. And they developed an management strategy whereby the service will go in and trap for coyotes, sterilize them, which is a tubal ligation, and oh, my mind just went blank. A tubal ligation and a vasectomy for the coyote. They then put that animal back on the landscape. And the reason for that is that animal will be a placeholder. They also put a tracking collar on the animals. They have just started putting white. So where you saw the orange tracking collar on that red wolf, these collars are white. I don't know why they picked white for animals that wander in the dirt and the muck and everything else here in northeastern North Carolina. That's another way for anybody that comes into the area to know you're seeing a canid. It has a collar. It's not a red collar, but it has a collar. And so hopefully anybody that comes into the area that is new or is here hunting for something else, they will recognize that that animal is of importance. They keep track of coyotes because, again, they want to make sure that their adaptive management strategy, what they're doing is working, that they are able to keep up with the movement of this animal after it has been sterilized. And the coalition is proud and honored to say that we have been paying for those coyote sterilizations for a while now and continue to do so. This past year, in February, the service held a coyote sterilization clinic and they sterilized 15 coyotes. So we were able to get more than half of what was on the landscape done and are out there and they are maintaining their home ranges. This has also been the third year, I believe, that there have been no hybrid litters found. So another way to show that the coyote sterilization program is working. Next slide. So again, some of the challenges: hybridization with coyotes, vehicle and gunshot mortalities, tolerance of predators, and political pressure. All these are items that the coalition is very involved in. As much as we can be, obviously, vehicle and gunshot mortalities, we feel like supporting the service, being able to buy vehicles, the big signs that you saw. Also, we have been able to support the service by purchasing an acclimation pen, which is where, when the service does releases, because the population is very female dominant, most of the males are coming from the safe population. So the service will determine where in that 5 counties is the best place to put a new pair. So they will trap for the wild female, put the male from the safe population and the female together, try to do it long before mating season, which is in February, so that they get to know each other and then hope that love is in the air in February timeframe. Gestation period is 63 days. Hopefully pups are born. One thing that they've learned, their chances for success of that pair staying together is if they leave them in the acclimation pen, if she whelps till the pups are about a month old, and they find that they tend to stay together. Wolves are great family members. I could do a whole webinar on wolves and their behavior and what makes a wolf, and maybe we'll do that in the future. And so by them staying together, leaving them together longer increases their chance at success. Next slide. So what does the future hold for the red wolf? So let me just take a minute. This is that piece I was telling you about in the beginning. This is from the field notes of Mike Phillips. And this was on the day in September 1987 when they released those wolves. So his log says, weather clear, cool, and calm during morning, afternoon light, southeast breeze, and temperatures in the upper 80s. At 9:04 H, Warren Parker, John Taylor, Chris Lukash, and I departed the household boat in the small Boston whaler to the South Lake Penn. The calm weather made for a smooth ride, but added to our anxiety because we knew that wolves 140M and 231F could hear us coming. Wolves have great hearing. At 9:12, we turned the engine off and floated the last 50 yards. Chris and I steadied the boat as Warren and John muscled the 110-pound deer carcass out of the boat and began the wet walk through the sawgrass marsh to the pen. At 9:24, they returned breathless, anxious and nervous. Both were unusually quiet. Taylor said nothing, but Parker uttered, "We did it. We let them go." Always brings tears to my eyes because I always wondered what in the world did those first moments feel like for them. And I think this is a great representation. And that's where we started. Next slide. As I've mentioned, the service has a renewed commitment to transparency and community involvement. And that includes also an improved relationship with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. And I would also say that the coalition is committed to all of these as well. Again, all we do are red wolves and support the service and their endeavors and continue to look for ways to help them when resources are needed. We support the SAFE program with financial resources and educational support. We offer the Safe Facilities mini grants for those projects that it always seems like small projects there's not enough funding for. And some of these zoos and nature centers, their budgets are very tight. And so we are thrilled to be able to offer these small mini grants to help push through projects, sometimes over the finish line, and also support them from an educational standpoint. We are on the education and the development committee, so we are very involved on a monthly basis with the SAFE program. The service has renewed their commitment to all stakeholders, NGOs, state and local government, landowners, civic groups, etc. I think Joe Madison, who is the North Carolina program manager's phone number, is probably on half of the people in the recovery area. So they are there. They want to talk to people. And the same thing for us. A year and a half ago, the service put together a, a a week-long project, and it was to work on how to solve conflict. It was a great week-long, I believe, with NGOs. There were attorneys there. The service was there. It was groundbreaking in that we walked away with a tremendous amount of respect for each other that maybe we didn't have before from an NGO standpoint. I think the NGOs came together and realized we needed to work together better instead of seeing each other as competition. Next slide. There's continued commitment to research. Pup fostering, I didn't touch on that. Pup fostering is when you have a captive and a wild mom born within days of each other, and they will take a genetically desirable puppy and move it from the SAFE program into the wild. This year, they actually did the reverse of that. They had two animals that paired that were brother and sister from different litters. Not an ideal situation, but it happened. Their genetics were incredibly valuable. So they removed, I think she had 6 pups. They removed 4, put them into the SAFE program at the North Carolina Zoo. And then from the North Carolina Zoo, they took a pup and put it in with the wild. Very interesting. Again, it's the service looking at ways to increase the chance for survival of red wolves in the wild. That is what all of us want. We want a future. It's never going to be easy. The business of wolves is never easy. Anybody that reads about red wolves, it doesn't matter whether it's Mexican grays or gray wolves or red wolves. It is tough. People have a preconceived notion. Where they get it from, I don't always know or understand, but that's okay. It's theirs, and I will learn to accept that's their opinion just as mine is mine. But it is difficult. It is job security. The education of red wolves will continue to go on for a very, very long time. Next slide. So I went really fast. There were 10 million things that I didn't say. But I hope I gave you a good glimpse into what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Red Wolf Recovery Program looks like today, about what the coalition is doing, what we are involved in, what other NGOs are involved in. It was a pretty cool year. We had in the Alligator River population, there were 4 pups born. Pocosin Lakes, there were 3 pups born. They also placed abdominal transmitters in pups so that they're able to keep up with them, because last year all the pups were lost. The Alligator River pups, they're not sure what happened. And so they wanted to be able to take this opportunity in this moment in time to be able to put transmitters in those pups. Pup survival is about 50%. Um, the Milltail pack, which is at Alligator River, which most people see, is made up of the breeding pair, 5 yearlings, and 6 pups. Pocosin Lakes, the breeding pair and 2 pups. I'm trying to look at else, whatever. Anyway, that's a good little rundown. Again, all that information can be found on the Red Wolf Recovery Program's website. And so now I will stop talking because I have talked way too long for questions and answers. So Emily, take it away.
Myself there. All right. Thank you so much, Kim. I loved all that great information. I especially enjoyed hearing about, was that the first release with "We did it, we let them go"? That quote?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that gives me just,
that made
just
me tear up.
and I struggle. I always get tear. I don't know if you heard my voice crack at the end, but I knew 2 of those people, and just envisioning how that moment must have felt. Incredible, incredible.
Yeah, I want to live in a world where there's wilderness and, and wild
Exactly.
animals that
Yeah.
roam it. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for that. And we do have some time, about 10 minutes for questions. These are our email addresses if you also want to email one of us after the fact. If you have a very specific Red Wolf question, I advise you to email Kim. If you have a question about Environment North Carolina or Environment America, our priorities and wildlife crossings, then you can send me an email at emason@environmentnorthcarolina.org. I'm going to stop sharing really quick so I can share some links in the chat. So before we do Q&A, I just want to close with a few things that all of you can do. So first, you can check to see if your state has received wildlife crossing funding at this link that I will put in the chat. Since wildlife crossings are so important for not just red wolf recovery, but seeing as how many of you come from other states where there not be red wolves, wildlife crossings help with the survival of many of our wildlife. Second thing that you can do is, if you live in North Carolina or if you are in North Carolina this weekend, Environment North Carolina Research and Policy Center is hosting a Red Wolf exhibit viewing this Sunday at the Museum of Life and Science in Durham. We have limited space, but there's a few spots left. So if you are interested, I will put the sign up in the chat. And if you RSVP, then we will see if we can fit you into that this Sunday. Please register and we'll let you know if we have the space. So now I will look in the chat to see what questions everyone has. I'll start at the bottom. Let's see, it looks like Kim's already answering some. Yes, PDZA has wolves on exhibit. Do you remember when the U.S. Forest or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started putting orange collars versus white collars on red wolves?
About 4 years ago is my memory.
Okay. Has the work of the service been constrained or cut under the current administration? In that context, has the recent budget bill affected the service's work?
Their budget has not been cut.
Okay,
So it
second
is
question
business as
is,
usual.
does this administration support Red Wolf programs? I would say it seems as if they do because the budget has not been cut. Do we know the status of 2411M?
Okay. So it is, yeah, Emily and I talked about this. I don't keep up with their stud book numbers. That's the services, um, responsibility. So I don't know who 2411M is. I don't know who that is.
Okay. The second part to the question is he still with the Pongo female? I don't know.
So sure, why not? I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know.
What's the difference between the orange and white collar?
So the coyotes wear the white collar, the wolves wear the orange.
Is there any idea how long the wildlife crossovers will begin? Did advocacy work to get it passed? Um, I
Certainly a
think they're
lot of
referring.
groups, it's going to be a number of years before they're going to be able to get
Mhm.
started. There's a lot of um, I's to dot and T's to cross.
Yeah, and that was the work of a couple of, I think, nonprofits came together with agency partners in North Carolina. If you're talking
Yes.
about the grant funding
Yep.
that North Carolina got 25 million, I believe, from the federal government, it will take quite a few years to obtain that funding and then actually begin to build. Um, let's see. Are Fish and Wildlife staff going to keep their jobs?
As of today, they do.
Let me see if I missed something.
So I will tell you
Does,
while you're looking, the
yeah,
field crew, because they work with live animals, are exempt from being furloughed. So they are still working. It is still business as usual for them.
okay, great.
Don't know they're
Um,
being paid, but they are still working.
sure. Chris R asked, does Point Defiance still have connection to Red Wolves?
Oh my gosh, yeah. The North Carolina Zoo has the most red wolves, and then PDZA is second. Yes, they are still a leader in red wolf conservation.
Holly asks, can deer whistles be outfitted to send a signal to the orange collar to alert the wolf of road danger?
I don't know. I don't know anything about deer whistles, and how that would work on a collar. But
Yeah, maybe we could ask
I can
someone from a
ask. I
hunting
can
group,
ask. Yeah.
something like that.
Yep.
Do they still breed, NF asks, do they still breed captive wolves at Port Defiance Zoo?
Yes, breeding does occur.
Okay, sure. I have a few new ones. Pamela asks, have any of the pups for this season come from the Wolf Conservation Center in New York?
I do not know. I do not know where all of the release males came from. I do not know. Again,
Catherine,
I
sorry, go
think
ahead.
I think on the Fish and Wildlife, the Red Wolf Recovery Program, it may say where some of the wolves have come from.
Okay. We are sending back some to New York, correct? Some that have
So
bred.
in the SAFE program, animals move around for breeding. The Museum of Life and Science, their pair had pups this year. And if you've been there, it's a beautiful exhibit, but it can only house so many. Wolves are very tough on their habitat. And so that family group is going to be moving to the Wolf Conservation Center. And then the Wolf Conservation Center is sending a pair to the Museum of Life and Science. So every July, all the safe or as many safe facilities as can come together. We talk about research, education, and then there's a day where they look at where all the animals are, who is bred, their age, their health. Again, trying to make pairs. Space is always an issue. So that's something Chris Lasher is in charge of that. And he looks at where can animals move, who has space for breeding, who doesn't, and they figure out all the. It's great. I call it the Big Red Wolf dating game. It's really a lot of fun to go and watch and to be part of.
Um, awesome. So let's see. Stephanie says in Montana, some hunters set bait to draw YNP wolves out of the park and target colored wolves. Is that a problem in your area?
Not that we've seen, no.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, no.
There's some questions here about coyotes. Um, are the wolf coyote hybrids protected?
No. And we've not found any in the service has not found any in the last 3 years. They are not.
Okay.
They are not.
Yeah, there's another question about any concern that the coyote sterilization program will result in the eradication of coyotes.
It will not, I see that question. It will not
Mm-hmm.
result in the total eradication of coyotes. No.
Okay.
It will help with population numbers here in northeastern North Carolina and also keep red wolves and coyotes from breeding.
Is there a plan or hope to introduce red wolves in other areas outside North Carolina?
That is part of the plan that there are 3 sites. Right now, the service is focusing on North Carolina. There are some things that have to get worked out. The service and the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission have not always seen eye to eye. In the last couple of years, that relationship has improved greatly. And so just trying to figure out how a state and a federal agency can work together. And so when they look at another state, certainly that state is going to ask a lot of questions. And one of them is going to be, how was the state involved? And so they are working really hard to work on canid issues in general, not just red wolf issues, which will help to strengthen that relationship and moving forward. It will be a great example for the next place.
And Stephanie also asked if there will be link posted online for later viewing. Yes, we are recording this whole webinar. It should be available in later this week, and I will send that out to everyone who has RSVP'd for this, so you will get that. And someone is asking, no hybrids due to sterilization.
That's, yes, that's the, what, yes, yes.
Okay. You would think, yes.
Yes, it makes good sense.
Okay. All right, well, we are at time, so I hope I got most of everyone's questions in here. Thank you so much, everyone, for your engaged participation in this webinar. It's really fantastic to see so many people who care so much about this really wonderful species. And Kim, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
agreeing to do this. Yeah, if do you have any final things to say about the Red Wolves to everybody?
Just thank you for everybody that joined. I hope you learned something in all my ramblings. Again, Emily posted my email address if you have any questions. If I don't know the answer, I know who to go to. And just thank you. Thank you for your interest in red wolves. They are an amazing species that need our help. And thank you. Thank you for wanting to learn more and hopefully for helping. And thank you, Emily, for this invitation. It's been great getting to know you.
Getting to know you too, and I look forward to potentially more presentations like this. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.